Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to the stars of pantomime and the men that make them. Michael Harrison, how are you?
I'm very well, how are you?
Do you know, I'm great, and I came to see the Birmingham panto you did last year, Cinderella, which I think is probably the greatest pantomime in history. Am I wrong?
You mean that production or just the story of Cinderella? It was very successful in Birmingham last year. You know, it's like putting on a pantomime is like making a cake. You've just got to get the right ingredients, and sometimes you can get one ingredient that isn't quite right, and it just makes the whole thing fall apart. And Birmingham was fantastic last year. It was just a great combination of people.
I thought it was magical. I mean, you've got the recipe of two things. You've got the story, which we love, and then you've got the production values, and I suppose the third element is the talent. You're only as good as your stars, and as we sit here in Nottingham, you've done pretty well. You've got Joe Pasquale and John Challis, two absolute pros who people just love, don't they?
They do, and also they're very nice men. And if you're going to rehearse a pantomime in a very, very short space of time, you want to work with nice people because you get more out of it. You know, you get more out of the creative process. Joe's a genius. You know, Joe's comedy there's nobody quite like Joe. Some think it's random. He thinks it's random, but it really works, and he works in pantomime, and I think that's why. I think he said today this is his 30th year, and you can't do 30 years in pantomime and keep getting rebooked by all of the theatres. He's so requested for us. If you ask any theatre manager, who would you like next year? I've already got theatres now saying, can we have Joe Pasquale? And that's great for him.
I guess it's a twofold thing, isn't it? What he delivers on stage, but also what he brings off stage. And he's so positive and enthusiastic. And Panto is tough. It's 2 shows a day. It's relentless. There's no chance of being off because people are going to be upset. And he does knock it out the park every time for you.
He knocks it out the park, and he's a great leader. So if you've got a dancer who says, oh, I've got a bad finger, you know, my thumb hurts, I don't want to go on today. He's been through flus and colds and bereavements and God knows what else, and still gone on and done the show because he's a pro.
What's your year like? I mean, as we sit here, you've got things like Annie and Bodyguard, and of course the brand new production of Benidorm just about to open, and then you've got about 700 pantos that are all sort of at the top of their game. When do you start doing this? Is it literally close on the 1st of January and start rehearsing for next year on the 2nd?
Well, I'm already thinking now about pantomimes for next Christmas. So I've already got a list of titles. I know what every title will be. I know what the set will be. I've got a bit of an idea of who might go to certain places. So you've got to plan in advance, really. It's all advanced planning, and it's just trying to do as much of it before the summer, because once September comes, you want to be honing the scripts. You want to be really focused on the creative, because rehearsals start in a matter of weeks. I mean, I think our first show starts rehearsals in about 9 weeks' time. That's nothing.
And then we look at the Palladium, which came 2 years ago, and it was this beautiful spectacular, and then you brought it back the second year, and this year is the third. How do you keep getting bigger and bigger? It's almost a bit like Birmingham. Where do you go from last year when it was so amazing? In London, the same. I mean, you've got to impress. People's expectations are so high. It's a big pressure on you, isn't it?
Yeah, I find it a massive pressure, but I've done 14 years at Newcastle Theatre Royal in a very similar situation. And, you know, Newcastle isn't as big as Birmingham, it certainly isn't as big as the Palladium, but the expectation from the audience is just as big. So my motto is, you keep surprising the audience, but give them what they like. So there's going to be a routine like the 12 Days of Christmas. It might not be the 12 Days of Christmas, but you're going to do something in that kind of slot. You know, Julian Clary will insult the front row, but he'll insult them differently to how he did it last year. Nigel Havers, you know, wanted to be in every scene the first year. Last year he wanted a bigger part. This year he's going to play the understudy. So you kind of take a similar feel and you just bend it, and you bend the rules, and the spectacle's very hard because you've got to find a different look for the show, and actually this year we've found a completely different look. I'm going to do Snow White. It's going to look very different to any Snow White that you've done before, because I didn't just want to set it in a castle. I didn't just want the audience to go, well, this looks very like the Cinderella that we did 2 years ago. So, you know, a great deal of effort and thought goes into a brand new show. And the Palladium is the kind of brand new show that will then move around the country in years to come.
And as a producer, is it tricky? I mean, we lost Ken Dodd this year, who I just adored, and then we've lost one of the Chuckle brothers. I mean, the backbone of Panto is the variety special acts, and of course, these are the people you love to hire. Is it getting tougher? Is there anybody coming in from the bottom to replace them?
Well, I mean, Doddy was, he was your hero, he was my hero as well, and I saw him about 17 times throughout my life, and I never ever left at the interval. I never left before the end. And although once I think my granddad tried to force me out when I was about 11 to get the bus, but I made him stay. And you do look at comics like that and go, where are they? They are there. There's been a great young comic in Nottingham for the past few years called Ben Nicholas. Ben's going to be in Manchester this year. We've got to bring Ben on. We've got to work with Ben. Danny Adams in Newcastle is a complete star. He's just landed a TV series with the BBC after 20 years of trying. I think the difficulty is there's plenty of work in pantomime, but there's not the rest of the work the year round. So in the old days that you could go and play a summer season, go and play the clubs and hone your craft and play it to a wide variety of audiences. So by the time you arrived on the pantomime stage, even 2 years ago I directed the Crankies, and Jeanette said to me, because they don't work as much by choice throughout the rest of the year, the opening night of the pantomime is very daunting, because in some cases it can be 6-8 months since they've last been on a stage. But it is hard. We're not making stars anymore, comics who will do a pantomime. Comics today go and do arenas, they go and do Wembley, they go and do the O2. Whereas in the old days, you would have a primetime Saturday night TV show and you'd do Blackpool, and then you'd go and do Birmingham. So it is hard, but that's why the people that we've got to protect. And thank God, people like Joe, people like Brian, people like Shane, they want to keep doing it. They do enjoy it, and we can't let them go either, because they'll be the dames of the future. If you've got a Connolly who's in his mid-50s, he can be doing pantomime till he's 80 if he wants, but he might have to put a frock on.
There is that. And then we look at this beautiful theatre here. As gems go across the UK, the Theatre Royal's up there at the top in Nottingham, isn't it?
It's a gorgeous theatre. It's an intimate auditorium. I love it here. I love it for musicals. I mean, it's interesting. Some of my musicals in the past few years have ended up in the concert hall because of economics. But this is such a beautiful theatre, and it's a perfect theatre for pantomime.
Incredible. And Joe's back again. I mean, we had him a few years ago and they just loved him. It was virtually a sellout. This year's doing incredibly well as well. And we must remember, it is a business. You're putting a ton of money into this stuff. Again, I mean, the money you spend, I know this year you've got a huge crocodile,
huge galleon that will sail on, 3D, flying. It's all in there. But I think the audience expect it. I think also, me, myself, the company, they're the kind of shows we want to do. We don't want to rape the industry and take money off the public and not deliver for the theatre, because if we do that, then we fail the following year, because they will not come back. And I always say, we produce 35 pantomimes a year. If Cameron McIntosh produces 35 musicals over a lifetime, some will work and some won't. And that's the same with pantomime. If you do 35 in a season, some will be fabulous, some will be good, some will be okay, and then there'll be a couple of stinkers in there. But you learn from those stinkers, and because the aim is always to create the fabulous ones. All we want to do is put on a good show.
And I know it sounds cliched, but this really is the first place most people will see a stage, see lights, see theatre, hear a live band, and pantomime is so important to keep those generations coming back to feed the other musicals through the year.
There's a wonderful note that Andrew Lloyd Webber writes in the programme of the King and I at the Palladium. He talks about the pantomime, and he's very proud of our pantomime there, and he mentions this in his note, and he says, I think in 1955, as a small boy, his parents took him to the Palladium to see the pantomime, and he sat there and he was in awe and he fell in love with it. And all these years later, he owns the place. He is Andrew Lloyd Webber. And he can sit and watch a pantomime again. And he said, he still remembers the transformation scene at the end of Act 1, which was so spectacular. And then he can sit at our show and see a flying bus go over the audience, or, the thing I've got up my sleeve for this year, or come to Nottingham and see a huge, big animatronic crocodile.
That thing up your sleeve for this year is...
Well, it's very in keeping with the theme of the show. The route that I've gone down is different to many Snow Whites, but it's very nice. It involves Julian Clary. It involves flying. It'll be very spectacular.
He's not on a chopper again, is he?
He's not on a chopper. Julian will not be riding a chopper this Christmas.
Is it fun being you? I mean, to have the budget to bring all this stuff to life must be thrilling, because most people don't. And then to do it in somewhere like the Palladium and to consistently have rave reviews, it must be great being you, because so few producers have that liberty.
Yeah, I mean, we don't always get rave reviews. I mean, the first year at the Palladium, there was a lot of snobbery. They didn't like the Paul O'Grady, Julian Clary. I think the Guardian famously called us a tsunami of smut, and it wasn't smut; it was innuendo. I think, as I said to somebody, if you book Julian Clary and Paul O'Grady, you're not going to get nursery rhymes. But last year was a real turning point. I mean, I think it was a better show anyway, because we just, you learn from the first one. But it is great to have that budget and be in that theatre, but it's very, very special. I take it incredibly seriously. I mean, I spent the whole year fretting about it because I really wanted to be good. And I think there's an expectation as well. The way it is here, I've just sat with Jonathan Saville in his office here. He's the captain of this ship, and as I'm looking him in the eye, I'm thinking, gosh, I hope we deliver a good show this year, because it's really important. This theatre really depends on it, as do so many. With the Palladium, it's because you've got the industry looking at you. That's the hard bit. On the opening night last year, Cameron, Andrew, Nika Burns, half of ATG, they're all sitting in a row. Thankfully, they all loved it, and I think that's why they all voted for us and we won the Olivier Award. But the pressure to deliver is enormous.
Any more smut from Julian this year? I think we should go in another direction. It is Snow White after all. We can't have any innuendos. We've got to clean it up this year. What do you think?
Snow White's drifted. I think... No,
you're not saying there's yellow snow, are you?
There's no yellow snow. Julian is, for me, it's working with such a big star. I can feel the anticipation in the audience before he comes on. I can feel it. If you know his music's about to play or you hear his voice, it is so exciting. It's the closest I'd ever get to working with Danny LaRue. I mean, as Julian said, you walk on stage in a fabulous costume, hold your arms out, and you get a round of applause, and that's what Danny did. And then they both had a supreme talent after that as well. But that first moment is so special, and he's brilliant. And I encourage the smut. I've made him. I encourage the innuendo. I've probably made him ruder in pantomime than anybody else in any pantomime that he's ever done before. I've worked with him 3 times. We did a year in Birmingham, 2 at the Palladium, and every year I push it. But I never push it. I mean, I've got a son, so I wouldn't do anything that I thought my son would be, or I would be offended for him to hear. But it is innuendo. And the audiences come back, and more people come back. The sales increase every year. And Julian can play a scene, and when he walks off, they give him a round of applause. So the press might...
A warm hand, really.
Well, he always gets a warm hand, not only on the entrance, but on his exit as well. And I will not stop encouraging that. And when I can't encourage that, then somebody else should direct and produce Julian Clary.
It is a masterpiece, and your costumes there as well are incredible. I can't wait to see Peter Pan here in Nottingham this year. You are great at what you do. Nobody can touch you. Congratulations, Michael. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Alex.